All right, welcome back, everyone. We hope you enjoyed a wonderful lunch. Big thank you to the National Press Club for taking care of us all day, and the team and the crew in the back helping us with our sound. We're excited to keep these conversations going, and a very important next panel, ensuring people succeed at work, right? We've talked a lot about recruitment, we've talked about the business imperative, but let's also talk about how people's career growth can change from real investment and real tangible actions that we can take. While growing and improving our systems for recruitment of workers with disabilities, these are the vital systems and accommodations that are in place at organizations that are designed to facilitate success in the long term. So I'd like to welcome our moderator, Kay-Ann Schoeneman, sorry, I did it again, president of Curley Company and one of our sponsors for today, and our wonderful panel, Kay Sargent from HOK, Sean Hoffman from KPMG, Jason Carr from NFP and an Abil IT grad, and Lori Golden from EY. Take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Julin, and thank you, Melwood, and to the sponsors for putting together this event today. It's an important conversation, and we've been looking forward to it. I want to start by building on what Julin shared, that we've been talking a lot in the past day and a half about the policies and what it takes to create the pipelines and opportunities for people with disabilities. And what I'm excited about in this conversation is we're going to focus on what it takes to retain and then help people with disabilities thrive in the workplace. And what does it take to create that safety and the spaces and the places and the opportunities for all of us to thrive? And, the research shows that when you create these policies in the workplace that are inclusive and support diverse people, DEIB policies, and including people with disabilities, that benefits retention rates by over 90%, both for people with disabilities and beyond. So the impact and the rationale to do it is there, and we're going to talk about the strategies and the ways to have an impact. So we're going to do that with an esteemed panel of experts here today. I am going to start by providing some introductions, and then for each of the panelists, ask them to build and add one fact that maybe I haven't covered about your introduction, because for anyone on this panel today, my brief introduction won't do justice, right? So, starting with Kay Sargent here at HOK, Global Co-Director of the Workplace Team at HOK, more than 35 years of experience and recognized expert on workplace design and strategy, award-winning designer. Kay has many distinctions, most notably serving on GSA's Diversity Task Force, ASID's Foundation Research Task Force, recognized as a 2020 ASID Designer of Distinction, and I watched a video of Kay and the HOK team as winners of last year's Melwood Ability Award, the Accelerator Award. I encourage you all to go ahead and watch that video if you haven't already to learn a little bit more about HOK. Kay, glad to have you with us.
Thank you very much.
Would you like to add about your bio?
Yeah, I have 5 kids, so I might be the dumbest person in this room, right? So, but I think for us, we were in a client meeting probably 7 years ago, and one of the clients said, "How do you design spaces for someone that is ADHD?" And we design a lot of higher ed spaces and workspaces all around the world, and we had an answer, but we didn't have a good one. And when we started to really dive into it, what we found is there was a ton of stuff about, in the HR world, about the importance of including people that are diverse in your organizations and how to do that, but very, very little about how to create an environment that once they're there, they actually will stay and be successful. So here we are, probably 7 years after that question. We've authored 8 reports. We're doing pilots in spaces. We're doing things all over the world with our clients. I'll be in India next week. I was in London last week. This topic is exploding. And what we want to make sure we're bringing to the table is the importance that space and architecture and design plays in really providing inclusivity.
Great, thanks, Kay.
Yeah.
Our next panelist is Sean Hoffman, partner at KPMG, National Risk Management in the Government and Infrastructure team. Sean is an advocate focused on expanding opportunities for people with disabilities. At KPMG and beyond, he champions efforts to diversify the workforce pipeline in collaboration with Melwood. He has prioritized investment in people with disabilities. He also serves on the board of directors of Melwood. Sean, would love for you to share anything else?
Yeah, I guess one of the biggest things to know about me is I am a capitalist at heart. And so as I heard some of the figures that you were saying, that's really what drove me into this, right? Great retention, great productivity, clever, unique thinking and perspective. And those are the things that our clients want. And so for me, this is more than just something good for society. It's actually a business imperative. So that's kind of what brought me to the table here.
Great, thank you. Our next panelist is Jason Carr. Jason is a technology coordinator at NFP, a leading global insurance company. Jason is also a graduate of Melwood's Ability program. I mentioned the great content. I saw a video of Kay. I also saw a great video about the Ability program that Jason is featured in, as well as Sean. So I encourage you to watch that if you haven't already. Jason, beyond his core duties at NFP, Jason is chair of NFP's Disability Community Pillar within the DEIB board, and that is an important and powerful group because he gets to influence the policies and the programming related to DEIB within his organization as well. Jason, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah. Before I was introduced to Melwood, I saw firsthand how hard it is to find employment with a disability. That all changed when I was introduced into the Ability program. I took full advantage of everything that they had to offer, and that is what got me where I am today. And with that being said, I would greatly appreciate if you join me in a round of applause for the man who made that possible by Dakota Gibson.
Beautiful, Jason. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you, Scott. So, I'd like to see the impact in action today that we're talking about. So, our next panelist is Lori. Sorry, I don't have my glasses with me.
Lori Golden.
Lori Golden, and from EY. Lori is EY's Global Disability Strategy Leader. I rode up in the elevator with Lori on the way up here today, and as we were having lunch, I told her what I loved as I was reading her bio on the way up is that she has been with EY over 25 years. She is a Harvard graduate. She is beyond accomplished. The first thing in her bio reads that she is a person living with non-visible disabilities. And I love that because she puts that first and foremost in her bio, and it puts it out there, and it creates accessibility and safety as you read the rest of her accomplishments as well. So Lori leads EY's efforts to build on creating enabling environments and inclusive culture within EY for people with all abilities and disabilities. She founded Access Abilities and other programs within EY, and we'll hear more about those today. And she has been recognized within EY with the Chairman's Award, as well as other honors and distinctions for her work over the years within EY, focusing on global disability strategy and implementation. Lori, anything to add?
Sure. I'm going to give an inclusive self-introduction. That's something that we had talked about at lunch a little bit. It's something that we are talking to our people about increasingly at EY and encouraging people to do. So I'm Lori Golden. I am a white woman with short blonde hair. I'm wearing glasses and dressed in black and white. I have many non-visible disabilities. I don't have 5 kids, but I have 2, both of whom have disabilities. And my pronouns are she and her. And we do that as a way of sharing something about ourselves. As you said, creating a little bit of that safe space, but also sort of allowing everybody to have the same information, recognizing that everybody may not see, and it's a window into a little bit about me. I want to build on that idea of identification and of having non-visible disabilities. I was asked to lead a project around hiring people with disabilities about 16 years ago by a wonderful leader who was very motivated because she had a brother with disabilities. And my immediate reaction was, I don't know anything about this, and I have no connection to it. And I'm sharing that because what I very quickly found is that at that point I had non-visible disabilities, but it never occurred to me to think of them in that light or think of myself in that light. I just managed around whatever I needed to. And I had 2 children with disabilities, and that took a lot of my time and effort and energy, but I didn't connect it. And most of us connect to disability in some way. Almost all of us have had or will have a disability before we retire, during our working years. Disability isn't just an age thing. And I think the more we help people understand that disability is a stage that many of us enter and stay in, some of us pass in and out of, but it's an almost universal human experience. It isn't, we bifurcate, we divide. We say typical abilities and disabilities way too much. And I'm not sure that is going to get us where we need to go. Sorry to pontificate, but.
Thank you, Lori. Well, hopefully you know a little bit more about each of the panelists, and now we'll jump into the Q&A portion, and we'll have Q&A for the audience as well. So if you have some questions, save those, we'll get to you. So starting, first question I have, and we'll start with Sean on this one, and I'll rotate with the group as well. Everyone will get a chance to answer these questions. What is the number one thing that organizations should consider when it comes to retaining talent from the disability community?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because actually I don't think there is just one thing, right? Like when you think about disabilities, there's such variability in people's talents and capabilities and disabilities. And so what might work for one might not work for another, so you have to kind of broaden your horizon a little bit. I think the other thing to think about is maybe taking a slightly different mindset. So it's not necessarily about how do you shore up a gap, right? Like I think a lot of people tend to think of it that way. But how do you provide someone with the tools that they need to actually reach their full potential? So you probably can't recognize it by my incredible stature here, but I used to be on the Notre Dame football team. And, well, I was the manager of the football team, but I did get a letter for that, yeah. So, but one of the things that, I learned there was a couple guys really fast, but they didn't have great hands, right? Like the ball, they just could never catch it. So we gave them gloves, and then they could catch, right? So we gave them some tools that allowed them to really capitalize on what their talents were, and it made all the difference. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I think we should all be thinking about, is how do we just give people the tools they need, not to just get to some kind of baseline, but to really capitalize on their strengths.
Mm-hmm. And Jason, what would you say are some of the tools or some of the things that organizations should consider to retain employees from the disability community?
So before I was hired at NIP, they had no disability resource group. Mm-hmm. They have every other kind of group, but not disability. And once I got into my main role, they asked me to chair the new group. And I was very excited to do this because I knew the potential that people with disabilities have and may not get the chance to show because people can be very quick to judge. So I'm super excited. I'm working on securing a new intern role at NFP, which will let somebody with a disability join and be able to get the experience that so many people require, but it's so hard to get.
Mm-hmm.
So.
That is such an important point, Jason, that oftentimes the employee resource groups exist, but ones for disabilities do not. And oftentimes the first step is creating one specifically for disabilities so that there is that place in that community. And you creating that in your workplace is, certainly had a great impact, and that's a really important point to consider. Thank you for sharing that. Kay, thoughts on what can be done?
Yeah, so I think I tend to be a little bit of a gadfly, and I think we need a little bit of a slap in the face every now and then. So what we are saying to the design community is that what we've done forever is one size misfits all, to Sean's point. And what we've done in workplaces is the same thing as giving everybody a size 10 unitard blue suit, expecting everybody to wear it and to be able to fit into it no matter, sex, gender, size, etc. And that wouldn't work. Nobody, we would laugh at that and say that's absurd, but that's what we're doing in workspaces. We're assuming everybody needs the exact same thing. And so I would say the thing that we really focus on is if you do nothing else, you have to acknowledge that we are all unique and different and give people options, choice, and some control so they are more likely to find spaces and places that are tailored to their specific needs and requirements.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. You gave the example in the Ability Awards last year that someone said about a fish in freshwater versus a fish in saltwater.
That's a Scott quote, right?
Is it? Well, look, it all comes back to Scott
right,
today,
it does.
huh?
Yeah, so the whole world comes back to Scott, I guess, to you, Scott. But yes, Scott and I were presenting to a bunch of students, and he shared a quote that said, "We're freshwater fish in salt water. If you put us in fresh water, we'll be just fine. But if you put us in salt water, we will struggle to survive." And I think, Scott, I say that quote at least twice a day, because that is the thing that really makes, everybody's killed a fish when they were a child, right? And then we all felt horrible about it.
although
right?
the unitard is
Anybody
also
not-
a visual.
Has anybody in this room not killed a fish because they put it in the wrong kind of water, right? And so we all still have trauma from that. But it's a real thing that people can relate to and
Right.
say, oh, I get it.
A basic need,
Right.
right? So, Lori, thoughts on considerations for retaining talent in the disability community?
Well, I want to build on some of the great points that have been made. I couldn't agree more that environments need to be built for human variation from the get-go. That's inclusive design, and that's what we're all talking about. And I think careers and the way in which people work need to be built to account for difference in the same way. Everybody needs different tools. Everybody works in a little different way. And the better we can understand those differences, talk about those differences, and then build a culture where the term flexibility is used. I'm trying not to say flexibility because it's more than that.
Right.
It's more than flexibility in the hours you work or where you work or the tools you use. It's an attitude that says each of us is unique. That uniqueness benefits our team. It benefits the organization. It benefits our clients, and we want to play to our strengths by providing the tools, the resources, the environment, and the attitudes that allow each of us to be comfortable and be successful and grow. The last thing I'll just quickly mention is I don't think careers just happen, and EY doesn't think careers just happen. We are very proactive, everyone, about planning our careers, where we want to go, and that's universal. We're all required to meet quarterly with our counselor, and our counselor is a career coach. Everybody has one. You have them for the long haul. I've worked with my counselor for 16 years now. And we talk about what my successes were, where I might need to improve, but more importantly, what I need to do to get where I want to be. And that's particularly important for people with disabilities, because people with disabilities are, as we all know, often underestimated and overprotected, meaning people are afraid to give the honest feedback that we all need to get better. They don't know how to do it. They want to be kind, and that doesn't help. So having a process, a structure, and a culture that says you need to actively manage your career, and we're going to give you the tools and resources to do that, is a way to help everybody.
And you're bridging to my next question, which focuses on the role of accommodations and adaptive environment. And many organizations and leaders are grappling with and unsure with what it means to offer reasonable accommodations. And from your experience, and we'll start with Kay, What do reasonable accommodations look like?
So I want to challenge, I'm going to challenge the question a little bit.
Sure.
Because to provide an accommodation often means that something was done wrong in the first place.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
we believe really, really strongly that we shouldn't be having to adjust spaces
Accommodate,
or
exactly.
to do, to fix something that wasn't designed appropriately in the right place. We actually believe that if we're starting from scratch and we're designing spaces, that we should have a deep understanding of how every single thing in those spaces is impacting every individual. Everybody in this room is neurodiverse. We all process information differently. And just because you might be neurotypical doesn't necessarily mean that sound or acoustics or visual stimulation doesn't impact you. So designers need to do a better job of understanding and creating spaces that you don't have acoustic problems, or you have the option to go to a space that is better suited to your needs. Now, there's a lot of existing space out there, so we do have to make some accommodations. There's a lot of things I think we can do that aren't really costly. And what we're doing right now with several of our corporate clients is to come up with a checklist of, here's all the things that we would recommend you do. Here's a way that you can assess how you're doing now. Because if I asked anybody in this room, how are your facilities doing right now at meeting the needs, most people couldn't answer that question, right? And I'm going to take you back to when ADA first came out. The very first thing we all had to do was assess where we stood so we knew what we had to fix. So we're helping our clients do that. And I think there's a lot of really reasonable adjustments. It can be addressing acoustics, it can be coloration, it can be patterns, it can be intuitive wayfinding, things that aren't onerous but have a huge impact. And as designers, we always say that when you design for the extreme, you benefit the mean. Meaning every single thing that we're doing is having a positive impact on everybody in that space, not just people that are neurodivergent.
Lori, any builds on that?
I just love that. And again, in the spirit of building on that, in a perfect world, we would design to optimize each of our talents, recognizing each of our differences. And in a perfect world, we would have very little need for something like accommodations, because our processes, our built environment, our digital environment, the ways in which we interact with one another would take into account that we're all different people and we need different ways of communication. We need choice in how we take in information. We need choice in how we move through a space. And so there would be less and less need for individual adjustments. I will say, speak of being a gadfly, you found a like-minded person here. I just like the term adjustments. To me, it smacks of doing a favor. And I really feel that ideally, you would provide everybody of all abilities with the tools, the resources, the environment, the supports. They need to be successful, and you would not need people to say, I need it because. It would be reason agnostic.
Right.
And you would not need to divide the typical abilities from the disabilities. You would not need documentation and a lot of process. You would have the benefit of experts to consult with who would say, okay, I'm hard of hearing, and this is what I do during the day, and this is where the problems are. Let's figure out ways that I can do things more effectively, my team can do things more effectively, my space can be designed more effectively. You need somebody to think through sometimes complex issues, but it's not permission to do it, and it's not a reason to do it. The
Right.
reason to do it is you need it to be productive and create maximum value for your colleagues in the organization.
Right. I'd like to hear from Sean on this, and then Jason as well, on what adjustments or how could organizations and leaders approach this?
Yeah, I guess what I would tell leaders to do is challenge tradition a bit. You know, for years we have this tendency to fall into processes and do things the way we've always done them. And I'll give you an example of how we've done that. We've really thought hard about our interview process. For years, it has always been a something like this, where Kay, you and I are talking behind a desk to each other, or now in post-COVID, we do it over Teams. And for a number of folks, that just isn't a very good environment. You don't convey yourself in the best possible way. And so we've thought through a lot of different alternatives and give people the ability to kind of pick and choose what interview approach might work for them. One that's very exciting is you wouldn't even recognize it as an interview. It's a mock project where we bring people in together into a room and we have them work together for about 2 weeks. And they get to know each other and see everyone's working styles and assess how the fit works. And it's them testing us and us testing them. And that's just one example, right? There's lots of different ways that you can approach this. One is bringing an aide or a coach with you to help navigate, or perhaps providing the questions to the interviews in advance. All right, like, I'm not going to lie to everyone. We got the questions to this before, so right? And that was wildly helpful, right? And so think about in an interview process, if you had that same opportunity to know what was going to be asked, it just takes a certain dimension kind of out of it. And so that's what I would tell people, is think a little bit differently about how you approach things. Don't rely on just what you've done in the past.
And the transparency behind it too. You shared that, right? Jason, thoughts on adjustments?
For me, I know what I need, and I'm not afraid to ask for it. But that is not the case with everyone, whether they're embarrassed, whether they're worried about getting let go. So what NFP has done is we have partnered with a disability company called Disability In. And every month we are doing a seminar for people from the bottom all the way up to the CEO can join. And what it does is it educates both employers and employees on how to handle different circumstances. And so 2 weeks ago, we had our first presentation, and I thought maybe we would get 100 people tops. We got 600.
Wow.
We could only hold 500.
Wow.
Needless to say, I had no idea I would be speaking in front of 500 people. But it was great to see. And I'm so excited to see where it goes.
That is exciting. And that visibility and information sharing is important for those who may not have the courage like you have to advocate and know what you need and to ask for it. They may not know, and to hear that in those monthly forums, it helps. It starts to build that confidence and that they can ask for and get the adjustments that they might need. So that's great. Congratulations, Jason. Very nice. So we've talked a little bit about retention. We've talked about some of the adjustments that can be made in the workforce. Let's talk about the people, the managers, right? So we know that time and time again, as we focus on retention, one of the top reasons for employees leaving an employer tends to be citing a manager. Issues with a manager, challenges, and such. So let's talk a little bit about what organizations can do to ensure that people managers are trained to support people with disabilities within the workforce, and to empower both, the managers and the employee to have better experiences and partnerships. Let's start with Jason.
So for me, like I said before, I'm not afraid of people knowing I have a disability. I can't hide it. So it's part of my everyday life, and I don't know what it would be like to be able to hide it. So I wonder if that would be even harder, knowing you have a disability, but you still want to fit in. And I want to take away the fit in part of it. So I would encourage people to come to me, and if they're comfortable, be able to tell their story on a bigger platform than just their own family, their own life. And by doing that, maybe it will help them be able to better succeed, knowing that because you have a disability, you're not more likely to get let go. You're not more likely to get reprimanded at work.
That is important. That those with invisible disabilities partner with those who have, to share their disabilities and feel safe, that there won't be retaliation or that it doesn't impact their growth along the way. And that ties back to what you were saying about the employee resource groups. That creates a forum to be able to explore those potential fears or questions about sharing, those abilities and differing abilities as well. So thank you, Jason. Sean, thoughts on how to train support managers in the workforce?
Well, I think actually just kind of doing that, right? So there's so many organizations who don't think to train the managers. Laura, you said it really well earlier. Think about the amount of time you spend with your counselor, an enormous amount of time. And if they had no idea how to approach, how to train, how to develop someone, their talent with disabilities, right? It would be all for loss. I remember when we started down this journey, we were kind of thinking, well, we'll develop some great training for our new neurodivergent colleagues. That's the program I lead. And we're working with Melwood, and they said, no, that's not where you start at all. Start with the teams with whom they're going to work, and their counselors and their managers, because that will help them then help your new colleagues be successful. So thank you again, Melwood, for getting us on the right path there. But that really has made just a world of difference. The other thing I think is just socializing, having those conversations, making it kind of a non-issue, right? The more you talk about it and everyone is familiar with it, then it's no longer a barrier.
Right, it's accepted and out there. Lori.
Couldn't agree more, Sean, on the storytelling. That is the single most powerful way to, and I have mixed feelings about this term, but we're talking about mainstreaming disability. It's a universal human experience and needs to be recognized that way, not a category for which we have legal obligations. And kind of we need to, checklists are great as a start, and people need checklists. But a few years ago, for International Day of Persons with Disabilities, we ran a story campaign for all our people. What's your story? Was the theme. And we started with our top executives. We started with our global CEO, and then the managing partners, the CEOs of our 3 area firms globally. And we asked them to talk about on video, which we had up on a website, their connection to disability, because we know that everybody has one. And some people talked about friends or family or being injured or recovering from something. The CEO of our EMEA organization shared with the entire firm and then ended up sharing externally that she was deaf in one ear and extremely hard of hearing in the other ear. She had had multiple surgeries. They had been unsuccessful. And she had built her career as somebody with extreme hearing challenges and structured her days and the way she worked. And she had never told anybody.
Wow.
But when we asked, then she shared, and after she shared, boy, was there an outpouring. The notes that she got and the stories that people were sharing. And 2 years later, she was presenting at Davos at the World Economic Forum on ESG, on completely different topic. And she started out by sharing that she was hard of hearing and sharing that a few years ago she wouldn't have. And the same thing, there was a huge ripple effect. And I could kind of give you many, many more examples of how we've used this. I think all of us can, which is one reason why I introduced myself as somebody with non-visible disabilities. It's to open that up. And the more we do it and do it from the top, the more middle management gets the message that this is who we are, all of us.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing.
Okay, thoughts on how to train managers?
Whatever you're doing, triple it. Because the lack of awareness, I think, is really profound. And I think a lot of people, I think to Sean's point, they focus on individuals that are neurodivergent and ignore everyone else. And I had an incident recently where I was speaking at a conference, and a woman came up to me and she says, I just have to tell you that 3 years ago I heard you speak at a conference on this topic. And before I came into the room, I literally had just gotten off a call about an employee that we were really having a challenge with, and we basically just made the decision, look, we got to let this guy go. Like, you know, he's just being incredibly disruptive and just not getting with the program and everything else. She goes, and then I came in and I listened to your presentation, and she goes, the light bulb went off. And I got out of that room, I called my team, and we changed our course. And she goes, he is one of our most productive employees today. We went through a rigorous, and she goes, and we missed it. We totally missed it. We didn't pick up on a single thing, and he never said a word. And you know, 85 to 90% of adults that have ADHD don't even know they have it, right? Because in our generation, it just really wasn't diagnosed. Right. And so you've got a lot of individuals out there that may not even understand their own challenges. And so she said they've gone on a very rigorous campaign of really trying to assess what are some of the challenges and what might be behind some of those challenges before they just wholeheartedly write somebody off. So I think it's important that we really kind of double down on making sure that people understand and are well educated.
That's a great point, and it underscores the importance of having a culture of, you know, a growth mindset or curiosity to even explore that and stop, you know, a train that's in motion. It leads to my next question about culture and what organizations can do to create safety and encourage employees to bring that, you know, their whole selves or their best selves to the workplace. And I'll open it up, you know, to the panel. You know, why don't we go ahead and we'll start with Kay again, and what do you think can be done there?
I think you need to recognize the strengths and the opportunities. And I think for this woman, one of the things that clicked in the presentation was we shared that people that are neurodivergent tend to be outside of the box thinkers. They tend to be big picture. They tend to be entrepreneurial. They tend to see things differently, have more clarity on certain things. You know, there's a whole variety of strengths that they can bring with them. And this was an organization that was trying to innovate. And she realized this guy actually is probably one of our best thinkers, right? And we're about to get rid of him because he doesn't fit in this little square little box that we've created. And so educating people just on, you know, the challenges, but also the opportunities and empowering them to really run with that, I think is an important thing to do.
Indeed. Sean, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things when I look back on what we have done here. One, we established employee resource groups, a couple of different ones, and we tried not to keep them too broad, but very focused on what people's individual needs might be. So in my case, I focus on neurodiversity. We established two. We actually have one for people like me, caretakers of neurodivergent individuals, and then we also have one for our neurodivergent colleagues where they can get together and talk through what their experiences are and learn from each other. And frankly, it's really helpful for us. They become a voice back to the rest of the firm in terms of highlighting what it is their wants, needs are from the firm. And so there's often this phrase that you'll hear, nothing for us without us, and that's a great way of being able to solicit that kind of information. So that is one way. Probably the other biggest thing that I've seen us do is focus on integration. So making sure that when we bring in folks, we don't try to keep them, let's say, all in one office or anywhere, but really put them around the firm. And when we've done that, it's basically kind of recognizing that you are part of the rest of our firm. You're just like the rest of everyone. So try not to segregate and keep everyone apart has been really valuable for us. And then the last thing I guess I'd point to is, and I said it a little bit earlier, making sure you're having those conversations and giving people exposure. So I think about another thing that we've done with Melwood is we've done a lot of these mock interviews where we come over to Melwood and do mock interviews for people who are going through the AbilIT program, which on one hand, great, the participants in AbilIT benefit, but we really benefit, right? Like we are gaining firsthand experience and practice at working with our soon-to-be neurodivergent colleagues. And so that has been fantastic for us as well.
Jason, thoughts on what can be done in terms of culture?
Well, I'm highly disappointed that I did not get to do my interview with you. I think I could have learned a lot from you. Culture is not defined by what you hear. I think a lot can be misinterpreted, and the only way to get around that is to put people with disabilities in prominent roles, not at the bottom with meaningless internships where you go for a few months and then you're back to be on the internet trying to find your next place for employment. So my goal would be to have a pipeline just like Melbourne does, where we have interns see the culture that an NFP has, and they are able to learn the skills needed to be employed, and then go on to getting a full-time job with NFP. That would be my dream scenario. And it's a ways away,
Yeah.
but that would be my goal.
Right, it is a ways away. It's conversations like today that are so important to keep us focused and to make that incremental change. The representation at the highest levels is important, and you can't do that without the spaces and the retention and then the growth and promotion throughout the organization. So yeah, it's the conversation we're having today that, keeping it front of mind and putting it to action. You're right. Lori, thoughts on the culture piece?
I'm going to play accountant here, and I can't do math, so this is pretty funny. But there's a saying we all know that what gets measured matters. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about accountability, because I think we need processes and expectations in an organization that both individuals and business units or functional groups, whatever work groups there are, however you're organized, are accountable for living the values that will get your organization where you want to be. And three of the core components of our culture that we measure both on an individual level in our performance evaluations, everybody gets measured on this, and our business units get measured in several ways, which we can talk about, are inclusion, building a culture of well-being. So promoting an environment where people can feel good and feel healthy and find ways to take the time that they need to invest in themselves so that they can do their best work. And the third is promoting a development mindset and helping one another, even helping your colleagues grow and develop. Everybody is held accountable, not just managers.
Right.
The new hires are held accountable for working in a way that helps our colleagues be successful and grow and learn. So this is built into our performance management process. We get feedback, we're required to get feedback from a number of different people that we've worked with each quarter. We work out who those people are with our counselor. It's a different set of people. So represents different kinds of interactions. And they rate us on those as well as some other criteria. Our business units are measured both, we have a diversity, equity, and inclusiveness tracker, a proprietary tool that and that really measures systems, processes, things that are kind of tangible. And then, like I'm sure you all have, we have employee engagement surveys. And those, we do a huge one every other year, and we do pulse checks twice a year. And those are broken out by demographic group, and they're broken out by work group or business unit. And leaders are held accountable for how their people respond. Obviously, it's anonymous, but those same criteria, as well as some others, appear in these scorecards. So we're reinforcing, measuring on a continual basis, and measuring everybody, not just people who are supervising.
This accountant loves that.
Yes, yes.
That's great.
You bring an excellent point that we have to measure and hold accountable each of the employees, not just the managers, not just on how they do their, let's say, day-to-day job, but their full job of how they are as a colleague, how they are in terms of growth and support and development. You know, as an employer, I so often see that facet is missing at times, where it's like, but I work the hardest and I do my job the best. Your job has several facets that include that culture, and what is it like to work with you, and how do you bring teams along? It's not just that one singular focus. So that's important. Questions from you all? I want to open it up to the floor. You've heard us speaking for a while and know the expertise that we have present here, and want to be sure that we get your questions in as well.
Hi there, Trent McFadden. I'm with SOAR 365 in Richmond, Virginia. We're a nonprofit with human services in the disability space and Ability One program as well. I lead up the Ability One program, and hearing you all talk about how you train managers and create a culture that really helps you to succeed as a company that has employees, I'm just curious if anybody has any experience or thoughts on when you're providing a service to another company, going into another culture, how do you share with them either expectations or what they can expect from a different type of worker than they're used to.
That change
being.
management
Yeah,
expectation,
yeah, when
right?
when it's outside of your culture and outside of your control.
I think that's a great question, because everybody is talking about ESGs and diversity and equity and inclusion, but what does that actually mean? And how are you actually making that actionable? And so we actually have a whole workshop that we're taking our clients through, because the very first step is getting everybody on the same page and educating them, but also, it often starts in our interviews. We go out all the time and we're interviewing, and we do projects for people all over the world. And I was in an interview recently, and the CEO said, "Oh, this is really important to us." I said, "Well, what does that mean? Like, how are you actionating that?" And he goes, "Oh, we really want to make sure that we're embedding this in everything." And I said, "Because we will challenge you on that if that's really what you mean." And he goes, "Absolutely." And I said, "We'll challenge you right now, like starting now." And he's like, "Yeah." And I said, "Do you even have the right people in the room?" And he looked around, and there wasn't a single person under the age of 50, and no diversity whatsoever in that room. And he got up and he walked out. And my colleagues looked at me like, "Well, guess we're losing that project, right? Great, good job there, Kay." And but another woman said, just keep going, whatever. So we did.
Sure.
Thinking we're just going to walk out of the room in a few minutes anyway. He came back in 5 minutes later with 4 new people that were on the committee, and basically said, "These guys are on the committee. You're right. These guys are on the committee from now on. You, and you. You're excused from the committee. You can leave. Bring them in." And so, a little risky, right? Didn't really know how that was going to play out. But I think we have to educate and challenge.
And right at the beginning, it sounds like, right in the onset.
This is not something that at the 11th hour you can say, "We want to do this," right? I mean, I guess you could say it any time that you want to, but you're going to do it much better if you embed it from the
Foundational,
beginning.
yeah.
I think it's so important to recognize people who go above and beyond. And for my IT role, I work with people who don't know me, who don't know I have a speech problem. Well, I won't call it a problem, whatever you like to call it. But if I see that you are going above and beyond to make me feel comfortable working with you, and not have to worry about my disability, your manager will know. And I think that is so important to recognize the people who do a good job, who do accommodate, and let it grow from there.
Yeah, the positive feedback loop too, not just the constructive one, if you will. Question?
My name's Lisa Deal, and I'm from TVS in North Carolina, and I just really want to applaud you all and make a statement. And I want to tell you a little bit about my background so you can understand where I'm coming from. I'm the mother of a 30-year-old daughter with cerebral palsy, who's now the Director of Adult Research, CP, for the Cerebral Palsy Foundation of the United States. I was a classroom teacher, I was a school administrator, and I wrote and carried out IEPs on a daily basis. Now I work for TVS, which is a dream job, my last best job. That's what I tell my boss all the time. What I see is a very unique position. We're not a service provider, we're a product producer. You can see our products next door in the Source America display that they have there. We are community-based, and I have been able to see students from the time, in some cases, that they're born until they retire from whatever job they're going to do, many of whom have disabilities and work for TVS. Those same kind of supports that I wrote in IEPs when they were in 6th, 7th, 8th, 12th grade are the same exact supports that they need to be successful in the workplace. Those things do not change. So as you have moved into the adult world, the for-profit world, and in some cases a nonprofit world, I just applaud each and every one of you for going above and beyond to make people feel comfortable, to make sure that the culture is there, to move that needle to expand the employment. We talked this morning about some of the workforce development numbers. There is a whole huge gap of people who are not even connected to the workforce. They're not connected to the workforce because either they've had bad experiences or they don't have access to the computers to find the job or a car to get there. So just again, just want to say I applaud you all. What you're doing is a wonderful thing. Please see me after this so I can get your cards.
Thank you for sharing.
So Lou Orslin from Department of Labor, Office of Disability Employment Policy. And I just have a question. You know, Lori had mentioned sort of different dimensions of accessibility. And if we can be universally accessible, then, you know, there's less need for accommodation. So where do we start in terms of sort of the built environment? I could kind of understand that a lot more. Digital and technology, we're all working on that, of course. But when you're looking at internal processes, how do you start? What do you look at? What do you audit? How do you audit internal processes to make sure that those then align with your cultural goals? Any ideas?
I'll say what we do with our clients.
And then Lori after.
We do a workshop at the very beginning and we identify what are the priorities, and one of the things that we do is we identify the gaps, right? And we make them, you know, where do you think you are on a scale and where do you want to be? And I think most people realize they've got some distance to go, and then it's that acknowledgement of if you keep doing the same thing, you're not going to make up that distance. So then we put in actionable steps and checklists about here are some of the things, not only from a design standpoint, but from a operational standpoint and an onboarding standpoint and accommodations, and, you know, any of those things, and really kind of make it systematic. I think in the beginning, you kind of have to have that because it doesn't come naturally. But once you've done it a few times, it just becomes baked into your DNA. I can't not design a space now that is more inclusive than I did 10 years ago because I know those principles. So sometimes it's about putting it down and making a process.
Lori?
Hey, Lou. You and I have discussed this in the past. I think there isn't an easy way to do this. This is a complex challenge. It goes back to measurement. You're going to love this, Sean. I think you need to self-audit. I think you need to take apart your processes from start to finish, all the touch points, and say, does it reflect who we want to be, not who we are, who we want to be? Is it inclusive? Does it communicate our commitment to career development and well-being? In the recruiting process, for example, it really kind of starts before you're recruiting. It starts with the words and the images. This is your bailiwick. The words and the images we use to tell the story of who we are. Right. It also begins with the stories we tell to illustrate who we are. And are we showing people with a variety of disabilities in the workforce, working with others, in teams? Are we showing them in authentic ways? Are we picking an image from a bunch of stock photos where they've had a model sit in a wheelchair and you can tell it's not a real wheelchair and it doesn't fit the model? Or are we taking the time and really giving thought to creating diverse and authentic representation? And we all know disability cuts across every other group. It's intersectional. So we want to show a variety of people of ages and ethnicities and races and orientations and backgrounds with disabilities. What about the language we use? Are we using words like abilities and disabilities when we talk about diversity, equity and inclusiveness, and are we weaving it into our general messaging? And then that's where it starts. I mean, I'll share recently, we did a custom photo shoot because we couldn't find the kinds of images that we wanted. And hey, Charles. One of our models is sitting right here. He was kind enough to stand in. This is Charles from National Organization on Disability. And he was kind enough, because we did not have enough people with visible disabilities in the office on the day that we did the photo shoot. And he was kind enough to come into our office in Manhattan, where we took photos of our own people and Charles and a few others from National Organization on Disability who had disabilities that were apparent, that you could see in a photo. And instead of just taking images of them as individuals, because that's not how people work, that's not realistic. People don't work alone. They work in groups. They interact in casual ways. That's the way we kind of set up the shots. I'm getting into a little bit of a tangent here. But this is just one small example of thinking through how you tell the story of who you are.
Could I add to that?
Yeah, please, Sean.
You're right. This does appeal to me, right, as a recovering auditor here. One of the things I think you need to do before you can even, though, set out on doing an audit is kind of define what good even looks like. And I think that's really challenging for folks to think about, how do we measure the success of a particular program? And I don't know that I have a great answer for that. I can tell you how some of the things that we are doing, although I'm not ready to say yet this is perfect, but starting to look at the performance of our people who have disabilities relative to everyone else. And even getting to that point was very challenging, because how do you get that information? In some cases, we weren't even measuring people with different abilities. And so it was kind of this journey. Well, is there a way first that we can identify who has different disabilities? Are they comfortable sharing that? How are we going to use that information? And so that is a path we're on now, is to try to just say, well, how does this group do in a variety of fronts, whether it be performance or succession or career tracking. But for me, that's always where I would want to start, is let's think about what good looks like. And then once you have that, then the measuring part's somewhat easy.
And Jason, anything you want to add? I think this will be our
I
last.
could be a model. I could be a model.
Were you in New York about a month ago? We could have put you in the
Modeling here, so right.
No, I think the more people see those with disabilities out
Yes.
in everyday life, doing everyday things, the more common it becomes, and it strips away the awe factor. And you just, in my opinion, you don't see it enough. And I'm one to go out all the time, and but I can't. I don't care if people stare. I don't care if people treat me different, because I know it's part of breaking down the boundaries. And the more you do it, the more you break it, the more normal it becomes.
Well said.
Bravo.
So in terms of closing remarks, I think this was a really insightful conversation among this group of experts about how we can continue to ensure that all people continue to succeed in the workplace, what we can do as colleagues, employers, managers, and advocates and beyond, some of the cues in terms of the workspace, to the culture, to the trainings. The key takeaway is that there is no magic solution. This takes an incredible intention and continued focus on this to have the continuous incremental change that we all desire. And it's important to keep at it because not only is it the right thing to do, but if you're a capitalist as well, but for a number of reasons, it makes us stronger, it makes us better as a community, as an organization, and beyond. And so hopefully you've taken some tools, resources, insights that you can take back to your organizations as well. I want to thank the panelists for sharing your insights. I want to thank Melwood for putting this together, especially Julian, Larissa, Scott, and the team as well. And thank you all for your time today.
What an awesome panel. Thank you, all of you, for being part of this great conversation. We're so appreciative. So we've built a lot of time into the schedule to make sure that each of you have time to interact with one another and learn from each other. I'm really excited to have kind of a short little session. I'm bringing Teresa Thomas from MITRE back to the stage to tell you about some of the ways you can continue to engage in some of these conversations well after you've left us today. So, Teresa.
Wait till we get our mic. There we go. I don't know that I would call this a session. This is your commercial break. I promise to keep it short. I know we've heard a lot today about neurodiversity. I know it comes up a lot in a lot of these panels. And hopefully you're familiar with neurodiversity and what that means. It is becoming the hot topic, which I'm very excited about because it's how I make my living. But also, we have put together a group for the last several years who try to meet quarterly of folks who are just interested. If you are in the field and you want to share your knowledge, if you have heard the word and are wondering what the heck it means, if you are trying to figure out a way to get started in being more neuro-inclusive in your org or helping your kid who is neurospicy find work, it is a great chance to get together and learn. So we were very intentional when we put this together. We're not the first one ever. These sort of spawned out of some of the neurodiversity at work employer roundtable meetings that we've had across the country. Folks, in Seattle going, "You're from Philly? I'm from Philly. Why are we over here talking to each other?" I got tired of driving to Philly, which is why we have one in the DC area now. That's a great group too, by the way. But so we're very intentional about how we put these together. The steering committee for these always includes educators, employers, self-advocates, and service providers. That is the groundwork of who put these together. That's who we try to bring together, but everybody is welcome. We spend time learning at each of our sessions, and we spend time networking, and it's very, very important. That again, is one of those foundational rules. You bring together those kinds of people, you do these kinds of things, and that includes a lot of networking and sharing and hearing each other's stories that we've just heard about being so important. And they really are pivotal. And this is where I learn what not to do, from Lori telling me stories about what they've done, or Sean telling me about the bumps they've hit. Those are really important. So we would love for you to come. Everyone is welcome. I do not have one on the calendar right now, which is why it's so important that we're partnering now with Melwood, because we were a handful of people with ADHD and nothing was actually happening. So right now the coordinators of these are, and I have to give a shout out, Melwood, MITRE, who I work for, University of Maryland, and Dr. Scott Robertson from ODEP help us steer where that's going to go. If you would like to know when our next session is going to be, we would love for you to sign up on our mailing list. As a former cybersecurity professional, I have to tell you to never click on QR codes that you see in public. But this time you can trust me. Because this one, I've tried myself, nothing exploded. This is a Melwood link. And if you point your phone at that with your camera, it should give you, especially if you have an iPhone, it'll give you a little link. You click that link, it'll take you straight to the page to sign up. If you don't feel comfortable doing that or don't have a phone that'll read QR codes, then you can reach out to Julian, or you can see, look, Julian showed it working. Or me, or neurodiversity@miter.org. Any of us, you can find us after. We'll get you on that list. We'll let you know when it's coming. We would love to have you. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to learn from you. So sign up.